3 years ago, my family expelled me after my sister wrongly accused me of stealing her engagement ring. It wasn't until later that they found it in the garbage disposal. I never expected to share this story, but here it goes. I'm Elliot, 26, and 3 years ago, my life was turned upside down by a false accusation from my older sister Gemma, 29. I grew up in a small town in Ohio with my parents, John, 55, and Lisa, 53, as well as Gemma. We lived in a modest two-story house that my parents bought when they first married. It wasn't luxurious, but it was home. My father worked as a high school math teacher, and my mother was a nurse at the local hospital. They weren't wealthy, but they made sure we had everything we needed. Gemma and I were close growing up, spending hours playing outside, climbing the old oak tree, and creating elaborate games. She was always the one in charge, making up rules and stories while I was content to follow along. As we got older, however, things started to change. Gemma was always driven. Top of her class, captain of the debate team, and excelling in everything she did. I, on the other hand, was more laid back. I did okay in school but wasn't as motivated as Gemma. As we reached our teenage years, this difference began to create distance between us. By the time Gemma went off to college, we were no longer as close. She attended a prestigious university on a scholarship, while I stayed local and went to community college, unsure of what I wanted to do. Gemma moved to the city after graduation and began working at a large marketing firm. She would visit home during the holidays, sharing exciting stories about her career, making me feel inferior. Meanwhile, I was still living with my parents, working a part-time job at the local grocery store, and trying to figure out my next move. Despite our differences, I thought things were fine between us. We weren't as close as before, but I assumed that was just a part of growing up. I never imagined how quickly everything could fall apart. 3 years ago, Gemma and her boyfriend Tom got engaged. They had been dating for 2 years, and everyone was thrilled. Tom, a lawyer from a wealthy family, had proposed with a beautiful diamond ring that had been passed down through generations. Gemma was ecstatic and proudly showed off the ring to everyone. The engagement party was a huge event, and my parents invited almost everyone from the town to celebrate. I felt out of place among the wealthy guests Gemma had invited from the city. I stuck to my old high school friends, who were still living in town, feeling more comfortable with them than with Gemma's sophisticated crowd. A month after the engagement, everything fell apart. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I had the day off. I was in my room playing video games, enjoying the quiet. Gemma had come home for a week to start planning the wedding with our mom. I heard them downstairs, chatting and laughing after a shopping trip. About an hour later, I heard Gemma scream. I rushed downstairs to find out what was happening, and she accused me of taking her engagement ring. She claimed she had left it on the kitchen counter while doing the dishes, and when she came back, it was gone. I was shocked and denied taking it, but Gemma wouldn't listen. She insisted that I was the only other person in the house, so it had to be me. She accused me of being jealous of her success and wanting to sell the ring to finally move out and do something with my life. Our parents arrived home amid the chaos, and Gemma told them her version of events. To my horror, they believed her completely. My mother cried, questioning how I could do such a thing to my sister, while my father just looked at me with disappointment. They began searching my room, turning everything upside down. They didn't find the ring, but did find some money I had saved from my job at the grocery store. It wasn't much, just a few $100s. But Gemma quickly claimed I must have sold the ring, and the money was the proof. I tried to explain that I had been saving for months and was thinking of taking some classes at the community college. But no one listened. The next few days were a nightmare. My parents and Gemma kept pressing me to confess and return the ring. They threatened to call the police if I didn't admit to what I had done. I was terrified and felt utterly alone. No one in my family believed me, and I was treated like a criminal in my own home. I reached out to some friends, but most had moved away after high school. The few who were still in town didn't want to get involved in family drama. I felt more isolated than ever. After a week of relentless accusations, my parents made a decision that would change my life forever. They told me I had to leave. They said they couldn't trust me anymore, and that I had brought shame to the family. They gave me 2 days to pack and leave. I was devastated. I had nowhere to go and didn't know what to do. My best friend from high school, Ryan, 26, who had recently returned to town after serving in the army, offered me his couch for a while, but I knew I couldn't stay long. His apartment was small, and he was still getting back on his feet. I packed what I could into a backpack and an old duffel bag, clothes, books, my laptop, and a few mementos of better times. As I was leaving, I noticed Gemma watching me from her bedroom window. I thought I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes, but she quickly turned away. Walking out of that house, the only home I had ever known, was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I felt betrayed and abandoned by the people who should have loved me unconditionally. The worst part was, I hadn't done anything wrong. For the next 2 months, I bounced between Ryan's couch and cheap motels when I could afford them. I took on any odd jobs I could find. Dishwashing, dog walking, and even worked for a few weeks on a construction site. It was tough, but I was determined to prove my innocence and succeed on my own. Eventually, I landed a steady job at a warehouse on the outskirts of town. The work was hard, and the hours were long, but the pay was stable. It wasn't glamorous, but it allowed me to rent a small room in a shared house with some other warehouse workers. Slowly, I started rebuilding my life. But the pain of what had happened never faded. At night, I would lie awake, replaying the events in my mind and wondering how everything went so wrong. How could my family have turned on me so quickly? How could Gemma, who knew me better than anyone, believe I was capable of such a thing? I cut off all contact with my family. They tried to reach out several times at first. My mother left voicemails, begging me to come home and make things right. My father sent a few text messages, saying we needed to talk. Gemma showed up at the warehouse once, but I couldn't bring myself to see her. I couldn't face them after what they had done. They were no longer my family. For the next 3 years, I lived this way. I made new friends at work and in my shared house. After shifts, we'd hang out, drink beer, and watch games. It wasn't the life I had imagined, but it was mine, and I had built it from scratch. I worked hard and even got promoted to shift supervisor at the warehouse. I started taking online business management courses, slowly figuring out what I wanted to do with my life. But despite everything, a part of me was still angry and hurt by what had happened. I missed my old life and my family, but I couldn't forgive them for not believing me. Every holiday season was difficult, seeing families together and hearing Christmas music. It reminded me of what I had lost. Then, last week, I got an unexpected email from my father. The subject line simply said, "We need to talk." The message was brief, saying they wanted to meet with me regarding the ring incident. At first, I was tempted to ignore it, as I had done with all their previous attempts to reach me, but something made me hesitate. Maybe it was curiosity, or perhaps a small part of me still wanted closure. After much internal debate, I decided to give them a chance. I called my father, and what he said left me stunned. The ring had been found. Gemma had accidentally dropped it into the garbage disposal while doing dishes, and she only realized this a few days ago when the disposal began making strange noises. They called a plumber who discovered the ring. My father told me that Gemma was devastated when she realized what had happened, and that I had been telling the truth all along. He said they all felt terrible about what they had done and wanted to make things right. I hung up the phone, feeling a swirl of emotions. On one hand, I felt vindicated. My truth was finally acknowledged. On the other hand, I was furious. It had taken 3 years to find out the truth. I had lost so much time with my family, and I had fought alone for so long when I had done nothing wrong. Now, I'm at a crossroads. My family wants me to come back. They say they want to make amends. Gemma has been calling and messaging non-stop, asking for forgiveness. But I'm not sure I can forgive them. They cast me out without hesitation, assumed the worst of me, and left me to fend for myself for 3 years. Part of me wants to tell them off and let them live with the shame of what they did. But another part of me misses my old life and wonders if there's a way to rebuild what we've lost. I don't know what to do. Should I give them a chance to make things right? Or should I continue living the life I've built without them? I'm torn and could really use some outside perspective on this situation. It's been a week since my previous post, and a lot has happened. I want to thank everyone for their support and advice. It really helped me process my emotions and figure out my next steps. After a lot of reflection, I decided to meet with my family. I felt I owed it to myself to confront them and seek closure, even if I wasn't ready to reconcile. We decided to meet at a neutral location, a small coffee shop in a nearby town. I chose it because it was far enough from our hometown to avoid running into anyone we knew, but close enough that everyone could get there easily. I was nervous the day of the meeting. I hadn't seen my family in 3 years, and I didn't know what to expect. I arrived early at the coffee shop and chose a table in the corner so we could have some privacy. When they walked in, it was like a punch to the gut. Seeing them again after 3 years was overwhelming. My mother started crying the moment she saw me. She looked older than I remembered, with more gray in her hair and wrinkles around her eyes. My father looked worn out, his shoulders slumped as if carrying a heavy burden. Gemma couldn't even look me in the eye. She seemed smaller and less confident than the sister I remembered. We sat down, and for a while, no one knew what to say. Eventually, they all started apologizing at once. My parents admitted they had failed as parents, that they regretted their decision to kick me out every day, but pride and shame had kept them from reaching out sooner. My father, who had always been quiet, talked for hours about how he replayed the events in his mind, trying to understand how he had been so blind. He said he had always prided himself on being fair, but emotions had clouded his judgment when it mattered most. My mother, through tears, told me she had kept my room just as I had left it, hoping that one day I would return. She said she would wake up in the night, thinking she heard me coming home, only to remember what had happened. Gemma, in tears, said she could never forgive herself for accusing me and ruining our relationship. She said she had always looked up to me when we were younger, even though I was younger. She admitted that she had been so wrapped up in her own life that she had lost sight of what was truly important. Listening to them, memories of our childhood came flooding back. I remembered how Gemma had defended me when I was bullied in middle school. I thought about all the times we had laughed, shared secrets, and supported each other. It made the betrayal hurt even more, but it also reminded me of the good times we had. I listened to everything they said, but I couldn't bring myself to forgive them just yet. The pain and bitterness of the past 3 years were still too fresh. I told them I needed time to process everything. They understood and didn't push me. My mom wanted to hug me before I left, but I pulled away. I wasn't ready for that kind of closeness yet. The hurt on her face almost made me reconsider, but I stayed firm. I had to protect myself emotionally. After the meeting, I went back to my apartment and thought carefully about what I wanted. Did I want to go back to my old life? Could I ever trust them again? Was it worth trying to repair our relationship? I realized that while I missed having a family, I had grown a lot in the last 3 years. I had become independent, strong, and had built a life for myself. I wasn't the same person I had been 3 years ago. I thought about my job at the warehouse, my online studies, and the friends I had made. I was proud of what I had accomplished on my own. The idea of leaving that behind and going back to my old life felt wrong. At the same time, I couldn't deny that seeing my family stirred up a lot of emotions. Despite everything, I still loved them and missed them. I wondered if I could maintain a relationship with them while keeping my independence. After a few days of reflection, I made a decision. I called my parents and told them that while I appreciated their apology, I wasn't ready to fully reconcile. I needed more time and space to heal. I set boundaries, saying I was open to minimal contact, but that I wasn't going back home or pretending nothing had happened. They expressed disappointment, but said they understood. They promised to respect my boundaries and give me the time I needed. My mother asked if she could call me once a week to check in, and I agreed, hoping it would be a good way to slowly rebuild trust. As for Gemma, I decided to keep my distance for now. Her actions had hurt me the most, and I wasn't ready to face her just yet. I told Gemma that I needed more time before considering reconnecting with her, and although she was upset, she expressed understanding and said she would wait until I was ready. The past week has been emotionally challenging, with many ups and downs. There have been moments when I questioned my choice, wondering if I was being too harsh or missing an opportunity to mend things with my family. But then I remember how quickly they turned against me, and I realized that taking things slow is the right decision. I've also started looking into therapy, as many of you suggested in the comments. I think it could be really helpful to have a professional guide me through this difficult situation. I've never been to therapy before, so I'm a bit nervous, but I feel it could be beneficial. For now, my main focus is on my job and studies. There's a big project coming up at work, and I'm determined not to let the family issues distract me. Additionally, I'm considering moving to a better apartment. I've been saving up, and I feel ready to have my own space without roommates. Thank you again for your support. It's comforting to know that there are people out there who understand and care, even if we've never met. I'll provide an update if anything significant changes. It's been almost a month since my last update, and I wanted to share some new developments. I've stuck to the boundaries I set with my family. We've had a few phone calls and texts, but nothing too intense. It's been awkward at times, but not as painful as I expected. My parents have mostly respected my wishes. They check in now and then, but they don't push for more than I'm willing to give. I can tell they're trying to rebuild trust, but it's going to take time. My mother calls once a week, as we agreed. At first, the calls were strained and filled with long silences, but they're getting easier. We mostly talk about neutral topics like her work at the hospital, the weather, and my online classes. It's not much, but it's a start. My father has been sending me short emails to check in or share things he thinks I might find interesting. Last week, he sent me an article about a new business opening in our town. It was a small gesture, but it reminded me of when he used to clip articles for me when I was younger. Gemma is struggling with the distance I've created. She sent me many long emotional texts apologizing and begging for another chance to make things right. I've simply replied that I need more time. It's hard, but I'm sticking to my decision. I know she's hurting, but I'm not ready to deal with her emotions on top of mine. The big news is that I've started therapy. I found a counselor who specializes in family trauma, and we've had a few sessions. It's been tough to bring up all the pain from the past, but I feel it's helping. My therapist is working with me on managing my anger and trust issues, and she's been giving me strategies for maintaining healthy boundaries. In our last session, we discussed how the incident with the ring wasn't just about the accusation. It also represented years of feeling like I didn't measure up to Gemma's success. It's made me realize that there were underlying issues in our family dynamic long before the ring incident, and healing will require addressing those as well. One unexpected outcome of all of this is that I've grown closer to my friends, especially Ryan. They've been incredibly supportive throughout everything. Ryan even offered to come with me to any future family meetings for moral support. It's shown me that family isn't just about blood. It's about those who stand by you when things get tough. Work has been a good distraction. I've thrown myself into my job and even got a small promotion. I'm now responsible for inventory management during my shift, which comes with added responsibility and a slight pay increase. It's nice to have something positive to focus on. Regarding my living situation, I've decided to stay where I am for now. It's not much, but it's mine, and it represents the independence I've worked so hard to achieve. My parents offered to help me find a better place, but I declined. I need to do this on my own. I've also started considering furthering my studies. A state university about an hour away offers night classes, and I'm thinking of applying to their business program. It would be a big step, but I believe I'm ready for it. Overall, I'm taking things one day at a time. Some days are harder than others. There are times when I miss the easy connection I used to have with my family, but then I remember how quickly they turned on me, and I realize I can't rush this process. My therapist believes it's okay to have mixed feelings, and she encourages me to be patient with myself and not feel pressured to forgive before I'm truly ready. We're also working on strategies for handling upcoming family gatherings and holidays, which are making me more anxious than I'd like to admit. For now, my focus is on healing and continuing to build a life I can be proud of, with or without my family. It's not easy, but I'm optimistic about the future. I'm learning that it's okay to put myself first, and setting boundaries doesn't make me a bad person. Thank you for all your continued support. Your comments and messages have given me strength during this journey. It's reassuring to know that I'm not alone in dealing with family issues like these. It's been 6 months since my original post, so I thought it was time to give a final update. A lot has changed over the past few months. The biggest news is that I've decided to relocate to a different city for a new job opportunity. This is a major step in my career, and I'm looking forward to the new possibilities. The job is with a logistics company, and while it's similar to my warehouse work, it's on a much larger scale. It's a management position, which is what I've been aiming for, and the pay is significantly higher, with benefits like health insurance and a 401k. Before making the decision, I had a long conversation with my therapist. We talked about how this move could impact my healing process and my relationship with my family. In the end, we agreed that it could be a positive change, a chance for me to fully stand on my own and separate myself from the family drama. I told my parents about the move last week, They were shocked and disappointed, but they understood. My mother cried a little, saying she had hoped we would have more time to rebuild our relationship before I left. My father was more stoic, but I could tell he was disappointed too. They were both concerned about me being alone in a new city, but I reassured them that I'd be okay. Gemma took it the hardest. After I told her, she showed up unannounced at my apartment, begging me not to go. She said she felt like she was losing me all over again. It was a tough conversation, but I stood my ground. I told her this was something I had to do for myself, and that our relationship wasn't in a place where her opinion could affect my decision. Our relationship is improving, but it's still a work in progress. We've had a few family dinners in recent months. They've been uncomfortable and awkward at times, but we're learning how to be around each other again. Trust is still a major issue. I've taken that to heart. While I don't think I'll ever forget what happened, I'm working on forgiving my family, not for their sake, but for mine. It was hard carrying around all that anger and resentment, and I'm ready to let it go. As I prepare for the move, I've been reflecting on everything that's happened. 3 years ago, I thought my life was over. I'd lost everything, including the people I cared about. But now, I see how much I've learned from that experience. I'm stronger, more independent, and I have a better understanding of my own worth than I ever did before. I don't know what the future holds for me and my family, but we plan to stay in touch once I move. We've agreed to have weekly phone calls and visit each other during holidays. It's a start. Maybe with time and distance, we can build something new. For now, my focus is on the future. I'm excited about the new job, the new city, and the opportunities ahead. I've started looking for apartments and researching the area where I'll be living. It's a mix of excitement and nervousness, but I'm mostly looking forward to this next chapter in my life. Whatever happens with my family, I know I'll be okay. I've proven to myself that I can handle whatever life throws at me, and I've learned the importance of surrounding myself with people who believe in me, whether they're family or not.